but it's that bad, is it?
It's just...
Welcome to the Barrow Book Show. Today, Mum has a bad back.
A side, a bad side. There's a bad side to me.
Oh boy. Well, this is going to be, let me say, this is going to be one of the best book shows you've ever seen. And, a true original, a true, what can I say? Mother and son return.
Yeah.
Yet again. Yeah.
Still.
Always. Oh, let's not say
Really?
always. Let's not say always. Okay, so if you're watching this, you're probably aware that Mum and I do a podcast together called the Barrow Podcast. This is the Barrow Book Show, which you are watching on our YouTube channel at the Barrow Pod. And every week after the show, we're going to be having a look at one of the books that has helped us really in our journey to write our memoir. Whether it's something that we've read that, it resonated, or, there was something particular about the style of it that I thought was good to incorporate. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
What's going on? We're on the couch and you seem, it seems like it's completely foreign now.
Not really. They're books that really are so relatable to things that have occurred in our lives.
So today...
So much so that I have notes on every page.
Look at this. If you can see that, that's Mum's notes. I asked her to read the book. You can write in the book in pencil.
I have never done that.
You won't disfigure the book? That's something that's not allowed?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that.
Okay.
Maybe I think I've underlined in pencil when I was studying.
Right. But this is not... How am I meant to read it after you've done that?
Well, they're so important that you'd read those as well, if you could read my writing.
So this makes it difficult for me to read. So I'm going to have to read everything first and then give it to you. Because I tried to get through this after you'd had a go at it. And not so great. So the book we're reading today, or the book that we're talking about today, is this one. It's called The Erratics by Vicki... I don't know how to say her middle name. Laveau or Laveau? Vicki Laveau-Harvie? Laveau. The Erratics, a memoir. It won, I believe, the Stella Prize. And it's got a little quote here on the cover by Margaret Atwood. A searing, brilliantly written memoir about a cunning and destructive mother. Reads like a novel. Margaret Atwood. And for some reason, the publisher has decided to put via Twitter. Margaret Atwood via Twitter.
Oh, really?
This is a show that likes books and hates publishers, by the way, and I want to state that very clearly up front.
And social media.
I can't get comfortable here. I don't know how I'm sitting. Maybe this is how I'm sitting.
Right, okay.
But yeah, like how tacky is that?
Yeah.
That looks terrible.
That's ridiculous.
So anyway.
You just need the quote from the person.
So Vicki Laveau-Harvie, The Erratics. So first of all, what I want to say about this is this, and actually why it's good that Margaret Atwood is quoted on the cover, is that Vicki Laveau-Harvie is a Canadian author, but she's lived most of her life, I think, in Australia, or at least, the big later portion of her life in Australia.
Oh.
So is she an Australian author? Is she a Canadian author? I don't know. Stella Prize is for Australian authors, so she's whatever. And Margaret Atwood is Canadian. So that's why that's there. And I believe the publisher is a Canadian publisher, Anchor Canada. There you go. So Anchor must be an imprint of Penguin Random House, it appears. Anyway, who cares? Margaret Atwood says it reads like a novel. Now, this is something that has been kind of key to us doing a memoir together, has been my insistence that you make it,
interesting.
You make it interesting, yeah. That you don't get bogged down in detail. Yeah, it's non-fiction, it's a memoir, it's memory, but you want it to be infused with character and sensory detail.
All the people in her life, I suppose are written like characters.
Yeah, I mean, people become characters. So what do you like about this book, and why are we doing it?
Oh, well, because of that, it's very readable.
But why are we doing it?
Well, it talks about dysfunctional family, really. Mother and father. Father dominated by a mother. And the two daughters sort of have different reactions to that when they're looking back. Which is interesting. Yeah, so I think I actually picked my copy of the book up in Canada the last time I was there. Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'd been aware of it because it won the Stella Prize here in Australia. But
so you knew the author, or?
Yeah, I just sort of vaguely knew that she'd won the Stella Prize. I just knew that this book had won that. I don't know why.
So why did it speak to you?
Wow.
Straight away, the title.
Yeah, but no, look, I sort of wanted to give it a go. I heard that it was good, but then I was on a trip in Canada and I had this desire to read Canadian literature. And one of the other books that we're going to do on this program is Suzanne, which is it's a French-Canadian thing. For that reason, I just felt like I should read it while I was there. And I found a really great bookshop in Victoria on Vancouver Island. And grabbed this and then read it very quickly. And as soon as I read it...
And straight away, were
as
bells ringing?
As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, okay, this is like permission for us to write the memoir. This was like one of the cornerstone things that I read that was like, oh yeah, we have to do this. But I saw it as something that was essential for you to read to see how you could write your memoir. Because the mother in this book reminds me of someone to a certain extent.
To a certain extent.
Well, it's the black bulb. It's the black bulb. Beware the black bulb.
When I say to a certain extent, and I've got a note on every page relating to my
just to a certain extent
life,
just a little bit relatable, maybe there.
True.
Well, you've gone quiet. You've gone shy on the book show.
Yeah, I have gone shy because I think when
she is actually in pain today.
Yes, I am. When I'm making my notes, I'm making my notes on my mother.
Yeah, all the way through. You have listed things. So the book begins like this. Actually, the book doesn't begin with that. So the book begins with a little precursor, which is gives us a sense of why the title is what it is. And this was the other aspect of this book that I thought was really good for us. Okay, so I'm just going to read the little, this is a little preamble before chapter 1. So it states that tens of thousands of years ago, the Cordilleran ice sheet,
Cordilleran ice sheet, snaked down the east side of the Alaskan Rocky Mountains through what is now the province of Alberta in Canada and into the US state of Montana. As it moved, it deposited gigantic rocks called erratics along its path. These form what is known as the Foothills Erratics Train. One of those huge boulders sits in a landscape of uncommon beauty a few miles from the Canadian town of Okotoks. The town takes its name from the Blackfoot word for the rock, Okotok. Countless years ago, the Okotoks erratic broke in two and became unsafe to climb upon. A Blackfoot legend recounts that it fractured as it thundered across the landscape in pursuit of Nappy, the Blackfoot trickster character. He had rested on the rock and left his cloak as an offering of thanks, but when it began to rain, he took it back. Furious, the rock chased after him. None of his animal friends could stop it until finally the bats broke it in two along the fault line and saved him. The erratic dominates the landscape. Roped off and isolated, the danger it presents to anyone trespassing palpable and documented on the signs posted around it. Now, the thing I really liked about this, and what I liked the author was doing, is that there's a tie-in of all kinds of things, right? So she's taking something from the landscape that her and her family sort of originate in, but she's also drawing from Aborigine, Indigenous storytelling, which is relatable in Australia as well. The rock actually reminded me of Uluru to a certain extent, being roped off, no longer able to climb on it, that kind of thing, for safety reasons. In this case, Uluru in Australia is a big rock that, once upon a time you used to be able to climb on it. And,
but out of respect for Indigenous culture.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
That's right.
So there were a few things that tied together, but the other part of it too is, like, thematically, these deposits of rock, like these obstructions, these obstacles, and things breaking and splitting, and that's all thematic and captured in the narrative that unfolds. And in fact, the ending of this book sort of places the author's mother in the landscape just described there, with Nappy the trickster and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Which I can read at the end of this episode to tie it together.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. Like, it was the use of geography, landscape, folklore, and then the present narrative.
To set the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And I've said to you in these early chapters of your memoir,
place is important.
Place is really important.
Yeah.
The haunted landscape, the bush, what that evokes, what working, growing up in a rural school evokes. Yeah. And how I've said to you as well that, we talk about it in the very first episode of the podcast about narrative and the power of narrative, but that everything comes with a narrative. Schools come with a narrative. The bush comes with a narrative. And when you're writing, you're not just writing your story, you're writing a story in context with many other stories. And part of how you can bolster your own is to pull and draw from those other ones. And she does a great job of that.
Yeah, she does an excellent job. And in our case, again, it's rural setting, sort of.
There's the trickster outside the window.
He came in just before.
Look.
Yes, but he came in.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. We're talking about our cat.
And, the desertion. Not the desertion.
The isolation, you mean?
The isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of my childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And always the country settings, the country town settings, that belong to my parents' past.
Yeah, absolutely. So the memoir begins chapter 1, okay? And these are the first paragraphs of chapter 1, which you have marked and which we found very, very funny. So basically the narrative of this, if you want like a quick explanation, is that the author returns to her hometown, essentially, to her, I think her childhood home with her sister,
Yes.
to basically stage kind of an intervention to split her parents from one another. So her mother's found herself in hospital, but her mother has also, it turns out, been sort of depriving their father of all sorts of things. Like he's being starved, he's being sort of treated really poorly.
So they want to take action.
They want to take action
while she's out of the house to actually maintain that that position.
Yeah.
So rescuing the father,
rescuing dad,
and getting mum assessed, really.
Getting her assessed for mental health and getting her put in a home.
Care.
Care. So it begins, my sister unhooks the chart from the foot of my mother's bed and reads. My mother is not in the bed. My sister takes her pen, which is always to hand, around her neck or poked into a pocket, and with the air of entitlement of a medical professional writes, MMA. MMA in large letters at the bottom of the chart. MMA. Mad as a meat axe. Which is, as she says, an Antipodean term. It's an Australianism. Mad as a meat axe.
That's exactly right.
And she's just told her sister she's just informed her sister of Mad as a meat axe. And her sister's loving it.
Yeah.
And writing it on everything.
And immediately...
You thought of your mother.
Immediately I thought of my mother.
You did. And the mother in this book is,
what's the word? When you make up stories. What's a word for that? I can't think.
Duplicitous, do you mean?
No, that wasn't what I meant.
Okay, well, so anyway, one of the things I liked about this was that the mother really did evoke, in many respects, your mother, which is why I gave you this book. And its physical appearance as well, like the black bulb, the little black bulb that we've talked about. But yeah, you have obviously, you've highlighted lots and lots and lots of aspects. I'm trying to go through the pretend personas put on by both my mother and father. You write, mother friendly but didn't come inside. Father
certainly reads
something.
The pretend personas put on by both my mother and father. Mother friendly to everyone but don't come inside to my place. And father, helpful Joe.
Helpful Joe. Yeah. Do you want to flip through some of your notes and?
Do you want me to explain those?
No, I just is there anything that's kind of the no-go zone? I found there were so many things in this that, of course, you stumbled upon and related to.
And they leapt off the page because I could relate to them.
Yeah.
With that, well, I should be talking about my mother. Well, even the cruelty aspect. In this book, it's absolute cruelty, but there were moments of that in this family.
Absolutely there were.
One of my mother's mantras was, in regard to my father, you silly man.
Yeah, always calling him silly.
And that was said often. So the cruelty is definitely not on this level that you would discover if you read the book. But there's so many aspects that line up.
Yeah, there's so many aspects.
And of course, that's at odds with this family narrative of they're the sweethearts.
Yes, absolutely.
They met when they were very young, married when they were very young, and had a very long marriage.
Yeah.
and the narrative is,
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the reason I gave you this, and my sense has been that this book has given you permission to tell your own story.
Yes, because I think I espoused the family narrative for so long that I just accepted a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said before, I'm not going to say the cruelty or the madness was on this level,
mm-hmm.
but
mm-hmm.
there were, well, you would say differently.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm still trying to defend the family narrative, but there's so many aspects to it that now that I'm discovering a new narrative for myself to explain my parents.
Yeah, well,
and consequently you read something like this and on each page you can relate.
Yeah, of course. So
even I've got this note: glorification of father, demonization of mother, and that's what the two sisters are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The two sisters have a different view of either parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's very much along those lines.
Yeah, of course.
Which I can identify with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a few things come up, right? Like, we have talked about, and we'll talk about it on the podcast as well, but we've talked about being only children and, what perhaps having a sibling might have done or not. So in this, because you've got a story of siblings, you've got one who has stayed and one who has left.
That's right, and they have a different view, and the one who left had to leave and and the past is still very real to her.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting because the one who stays has a more practical view of the family.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? And she just does the things that have to be done. She's not
evaluating.
She's not evaluating it as much, and she's not demonizing as much. Whereas it's interesting, the one that's left, she left physically, but she's still there. The past is very visceral to her.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that brings up things for me. I wished I had looked at things with more, opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
And left and made a life for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading back over my notes, some of mine. So like the author's children think she's sort of crazy for having anything to do with her parents. Her daughter in particular, she says and the son says that his mother ends the nature versus nurture debate. He says which is something I think you brought up in the podcast the other day, which was like, that debate of nature versus nurture, like Vicki Laveau-Harvie's son says to her, like, if it was nature, you'd be a psychopath, you'd be a serial killer.
That's right.
But you're not. And she has gone away and gotten distance.
But the past is still there. It's real.
Yeah. It's interesting. And that was something else that I thought would be helpful to you is like, approaching this memoir, it's like how we got into the situation that we're in was that, we stay rooted in this situation.
Yes.
And I think we've both imagined now, particularly, what would life have been like if we'd gotten distance and what would the past become to you if you had that distance?
And look, there are questions that you can never answer.
No, of course not.
And also knowing the way I was wired, nature, would I have got distance anyway?
Yeah.
Even if I had physical distance. parents.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting aspect.
Yeah.
How the two daughters react.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She says a lot of things in this, like, she says something about, the one who doesn't care has all the power. She says something like that, and like, I think it's in relation to her mother, like her mother doesn't care to apologize or something, and so she has this power over everybody because everybody wants an acknowledgement, I guess, of the pain.
Well, that's true, because you never get acknowledgement from those sorts of people.
Yeah.
They say what they like, and I'm making huge generalisations here. They say what they like, they do what they like, and they actually, I don't think, ever see the consequences of that.
You write here on this note that there's a reminder, the book is a reminder that your mother was never diagnosed. As she retreated herself.
As she retreated into herself, she was less judgmental.
Yeah.
And I've also got only at the end, I think. Yeah, and I can sit here now and say this is someone that had, real mental issues that were never addressed because of the time, maybe, because of the era, I mean.
Yeah, sure.
And then when she dements, no one is noticing. In fact, I think the people around her, we are judging her. We're still judging her while she's dementing.
Yeah.
And then that goes back to my point about the sweethearts. The sweethearts really didn't see each other. My father really never saw my mother.
Well, one of the most fascinating things in the Erratics, for me, one of the, it's like actually kind of a gut-wrenching, it really got me, was there's a point where the sisters managed to separate the parents. So the mother, I can't remember the exact details, but in any case, it's discovered that, it's sort of acknowledged that the father will be better off without the presence of his wife because she is...
physically and emotionally.
Yeah, she's killing him.
Yeah.
She's actually killing him.
Yeah.
And they separate them. And I think he ends up in they downsize.
Yeah.
I think they end up downsizing his space. He has carers come and help him, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But, a number of years pass.
Yeah.
Right? And the mother and father are both still alive.
Yep.
A couple of years pass. He starts declining with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
But notably, and this is the thing that really got to me, it's kind of haunted me since finishing the book I think this is the second or third time I've read it. He never asks about his wife. They separate them and he never mentions her. So there is a point where the sisters are really having this sort of debate about, do we update dad on what's happening with mum? So mum's sort of off.
She's out of the picture.
She's
now. In a care
facility and they're doing all the mental health stuff with her.
Yeah.
And
they achieve that.
The sisters are focused on dad and dad's welfare, right? And in all that time, and it is a number of years, the sisters are having this conversation. They're like, do we update dad? Do we let him know what's happening with mum? And I think one of them says, well, only if he asks. We don't need to be telling him all the time.
No.
If he asks, we'll tell him what's going on. And he asks once a year for a couple of years. It's a couple of years.
That's
But,
right.
but the thought, and I think what really affected me about that is that these two people got together and create this whole world together and this whole narrative. But the second they're moved apart, the other one doesn't exist to the other one.
Yeah.
You know, and how easy it is for them to be apart.
Yeah.
And
the word I was thinking to describe her was a fantasist.
a fantasist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and your mother really was a fantasist.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what got me about that was it made me reflect on the nature of relationships and the fact that, you know, your reality that you manifest with someone, it can be such an intense reality, and it feels at the time
that it's unbreakable.
And that more than unbreakable, that this is the only way, this is the only reality. And yet, when you actually move away from that person, you may just never think of them ever again. Now, that's quite eye-opening, isn't it? It affected me on several levels. Like, it affected me thinking about my relationships, and certainly, you know, well, look, why do we have relationships, and what are we trying to do in our relationships? Like, I can't remember which author it is said that, you know, we spend our lives, most of our lives, the majority of our lives, trying to fix our parents' problems. And certainly my relationships have been an attempt to repair the marriage, the divorce.
Right.
Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I stayed in something I hated for much longer than I ever should have.
Yeah, because you were going to make that a success when I didn't have that.
Yeah, and so the intense reality of my everyday life was all about this one relationship, and then you pull back from it and you realize, like, there's infinite possibilities as well.
Yeah.
And there was nothing there.
Yeah.
But also the way that, like, you can just kind of forget the person that's been damaging you. You can just kind of also just like do away with an entire lifetime.
Wow.
Is incredible.
That's interesting from my point of view, because for me, your father doesn't exist.
Yes.
And it was absolutely mind-blowing to discover that he still existed for you.
That is the crux of everything between us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the effect that he was still having on you, because he was so much in your mind.
Yeah.
And of course, when I think about that, I completely understand it, but it is interesting that my relationship is so much in the past.
Yeah, so like, and I would say yes and no. So there's several aspects to that. Like, it made me think of that. It made me think of, like, my father doesn't exist in your mind at all, and yet he exists in my mind.
Yeah.
And for so long, you and I were completely misaligned for the fact that you didn't understand that about me.
No.
And I'm not sure whether I understood that about you or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's a couple of other things. One is that, you know, your parents made your divorce present in everything after it occurred.
Exactly.
And we have talked about the fact that you would have moved on so much quicker had you not moved into the situation that we did with your parents.
And it also affected how I related to that person.
Yeah.
And therefore, how you related to
my father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their non-acceptance, and more than that, their anger, their grief, really dominated our life.
Absolutely.
Always.
And so I guess it just sort of, it really brought home that truth that, you know, that the people you're with can shape and affect, obviously, your reality so strongly.
Yeah.
But that you can find so much peace without them.
Yes.
And that's what I find
Yes.
so incredible, is that the father in this book has spent basically a lifetime with this woman who has given him so much grief.
And he's been in fear
of her,
but still defensive of her.
Yeah, of course, in that way.
Until there's a physical separation.
And then there's a physical separation, and she might as well not have existed at all. And just that the way that a person being in or out of your life changes everything for you and how you experience life.
Yeah, and I think I now, that's visceral for me. I really feel that fact that I never removed myself.
Yeah.
So my parents are always present to me. They're always in my mind. And
I think the other thing that it brought up in the last part of that was, after your mother died, your father's relationship to her, like, he has been affected by her death, don't get me wrong.
No.
But he really is not as affected as either of us thought he would be. Like, when she passed away, I gave him 12 months, which is kind of the pretty usual. That's kind of typical. If the wife goes first, the husband comes very soon after.
Such a long, close...
Supposedly close, yeah.
Well, it was close because they had no one else in their lives. They only had each other.
Yes, sorry. I take your point. Yeah. And he has gone on living now for years, really because I think, and this might be a bit horrible to say, but because
there is no depth of feeling.
There wasn't a depth of feeling, and because he is not moved, his life is not driven, as I see it, by his emotional realm. His life is really just driven by his tasks, and that he is so kind of seemingly self-absorbed that, yes, his wife died, but he was so preoccupied with his little medicals and his...
Yeah, and there's a superficiality about the emotion. It's Mum's looking down on me from that photo, and your mother's looking down on me, and look, I've done a little bit of dusting, your mum would be proud. And again, that narrative of they were just so aligned. But it's just on the surface. I mean, it's not hard. It's difficult to sit here and make those kind of judgments because they were together for a long, long time. When I say there was no one else, I literally mean that they did not have
a single
any
friendship
group.
No, it's just the two of them. And that was what this reminded me of that.
Yes, because they were isolated.
They isolated themselves.
Absolutely.
And they withdrew from others, and they only had themselves. And so they just, the reality they live in is just the one they're creating.
The mother had her fantasies about the life they had. And the terrible things she said about the daughters and so on and so on.
Yeah, so it really reminded me of our situation in a lot of ways. But just to clarify that point, like, I'm not saying that you know, Mum's dad has no emotions and didn't care about his wife dying. I don't mean it that way, and I don't mean that they weren't close actually or any of that. What I'm saying though is that the removal of your mother from your father's life has not had the effect I thought it would. And I am seeing increasingly how much she was to him more like kind of another task, a pet project. Like that she was one of his many tasks.
Yeah.
And that has been difficult to come to terms with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's caused you quite a bit of, okay. Yeah. But back to this book, like look, the number one tool for any writer is reading, right? And so when Mum and I started the memoir, it was really essential that we read memoirs, but that we find ones that, could, personally, it was like a bit of a mission for me to find memoirs that could help give you permission to write your story.
Oh, yeah.
And this has been pretty much like the key one, because it's like, it's not only what the writer's saying about their family and reflecting, but it's how they're going about it as well.
Yes. There's no blame game in that. It's a story about people. And people who are flawed, and the effect that has on their children, their offspring.
Yep.
And that's what we're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when people write memoir, there's a tendency for them to, because it's non-fiction, to focus on facts. And when you focus on this non-fiction, you feel like you have to say something, you have to sum up, you have to make a point, in a very literal sense.
Yeah.
But what you need to do is you need to write like a novel, you need to tell a story, and a story is filled with characters, not people necessarily, but characters. And so you need to find the character in the people you're talking about. You need to sort of translate them into that entertaining form of writing, and this does an excellent job of that. It's a great book. We recommend it, and I might actually do a little series on like what I learned from some of these things as a writer, because one of the great achievements of this book, I think, is how she manages time and deals with time shifts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's very well done.
Yeah, which is
my tip is maybe underline in pencil rather than fill the book with
index notes.
Cardboard notes.
Maybe underline in pencil. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this, or anything you want to say generally? No?
No.
Okay. All right. Thanks for watching the first episode of the Barrow Book Show. This is a new format for us. We're still wrapping our head around it. So bear with us, and we'll see you next time in episode 2. Bye. So I'll warm that up.